The Curses and the Covenants, A History Weaver Mystery Book 2 by Connie Worden, read by the author. Chapter 25. I was busy in class the rest of the day and hadn't heard if there had been any new developments on Julia's whereabouts. When I got to school the next morning, however, the staff room was abuzz with the news that there had been no word on Julia. She hadn't been in school all day, and her mother had called the school to let them know she hadn't come home that night. Her parents had filed a missing persons report with the police. Additionally, they'd been calling any friends she may have been visiting, as well as driving around looking for her themselves. From my knowledge of detective shows on TV, I thought there was a 48-hour threshold before someone was considered officially missing. But maybe it was different for a 15-year-old girl. By the next day, when there was still no information on Julia, we learned that search parties had been organized and were going out that morning. I taught my classes with only half my mind on them. The students were all subdued. The knowledge that one of their own had disappeared without warning seemed to be weighing on all of us. I got through one more day of classes without hearing anything about Julia, but that evening Pete called me. "I wanted to let you know personally right after her family." He jumped in, his voice more solemn than usual. "You're her counselor, besides her teacher, and she's close to you, her mom tells me, so I didn't want you to have to hear it through the grapevine. Or the press conference. We're releasing the information in a press release tomorrow, so it will be public knowledge, but please keep it under your hat till then." "You found Julia," I said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, unfortunately." "She's dead?" My voice rose at the end to half a shriek. This couldn't be happening. First Ma's stroke, and now Julia? What would be next? Didn't bad things happen in threes? Was this the curse I'd been thinking about? Was Julia really cursed? Was I? I didn't believe it, of course, but the thoughts flashed through my brain before I could stop them. The irrelevant thoughts kept me from taking in the reality of what Pete was saying. "Her parents identified her. She was found in the woods east of Beaver Row. You know that heavily wooded area with the old bridge going across that dry ravine? The one where the old road ran? The old road, or whatever it was, is totally overgrown now, but the old bridge is still there. You know the place?" "Vaguely. It's actually just down a little ways from the property I bought. It's just past the old cherry barn in the woods. Except, not the old cherry barn anymore. Now it's the Lyons place, if you know where that is. I saw the bridge when I was out exploring in the woods one time." As I said it, more irrelevant thoughts flashed through my brain. I started wondering again if the land I was living on was my ancestors' land when they first came to Beaver Row. I was reminded that my place was close to the stone bridge. The bridge and the gold mine had been close to each other and close to the Adamsons' land, which possibly included my chunk of land, close to the old stone bridge as it was. "Come on, Ange," I mentally scolded myself. "You're way off topic. Keep it together." I couldn't seem to focus, and wondered if I was in a bit of a state of shock. What would Pete think with me babbling away to him at a time like this? I hoped he'd realize it was just a nervous reaction. "A search party found her at the bottom of the ravine just below the bridge. Her parents have identified the body." "Do you think she jumped?" I was fighting to keep back hysterical tears. If only I'd been able to help her when she'd more or less pleaded with me to give her some kind of hope that I hadn't been able to offer her. "It's too soon to say. The investigation will tell us. All I know right now is that at first blush, her injuries seem consistent with a fall from the bridge. This isn't going into the press report, Angie, but there's something else I wanted to let you know because of your involvement in the case. You may be able to help us out with the investigation in the future. Near Julia's body was a heap of stones." "You mean—" "Like the one she described to you." "Has anyone dug through it to see if—" "Yes, we removed the pile." "And?" "There were human remains under it." I felt myself growing colder and the room tilting. I quickly sat down. I'd never fainted in my life, and I didn't want to start now. Of all her wild stories, that one had been true? "Just a skeleton and his clothes. We'll be trying to match dental records to find out who it is. An old homeless guy? No, I don't think so. We'll have to wait on forensics before we know much about him. But from the clothing, I'd say he wasn't old at all. Or homeless. And he definitely wasn't shot through the head. I gave the skull a quick look over, and it looked like he may have been bashed. He had a cracked skull. It would be very unlikely that Julia had anything to do with it. I don't think she could crack a man's skull unless she had a very heavy object. But it's a skeleton, so it certainly has been there longer than the recent time frame she gave you for the incident she described. Also, wild rose bushes have grown up over the stone heap, so it's been there some time. It was just luck that someone on our team noticed it at all. I would say it's been there possibly longer than Julia's been alive. Whatever he's doing there, she had nothing to do with it. But it can't be coincidence, I said. She must have known about it. I could almost hear Pete's shrug over the phone line. Maybe she saw the pile of stones on a ramble through the woods, he suggested lamely. Why would she ramble through the ravine, though? Who knows why, but she could have. It would be doable. But if the pile was undisturbed when you found it, how could she possibly have known what was under it? I questioned. I didn't even have a decent theory. It seemed that Pete didn't either. There was silence on the other end. Coincidence? He offered. Really? Come on, Pete. She has a wild imagination. Maybe she discovered the heap of stones and built a crazy story around it, and one piece of it ended up being true. It might have suggested a burial place to her from the size and shape of it. That's what I mean by coincidence. Not even a good try, I told him. If your people barely noticed it because the wild roses were covering it over, why would Julia have seen it and decided it would be a good setting for a buried body for one of her tall tales? I mean, she may have. But what are the odds that it really would be a burial place? It doesn't sound like it really looked like one from the way you described it. He sighed a long sigh on the other end. It's a mystery, he said. It may be a long investigation with lots of different pieces to come to light. No sense jumping to any conclusions at this point. Step 1 will be figuring out how Julia died and why. Step 2 will be identifying the skeleton. We'll probably know a whole lot more once we know those 2 facts. If ever, I muttered to myself. Would we ever know conclusively why Julia had died? On the face of it, it looked to me like she'd jumped from the bridge. But what if she hadn't? What if she hadn't killed herself at all? There was nothing to be known until the autopsy told us what had killed her, I supposed.